Welcome back to Quiz Guides. If you're new here, Quiz Guides are short crash course style videos to help beginner, novice, and intermediate players learn more about different quizable topics. Today, I'm going to be talking about the pillars of Islam. So the 5 pillars of Islam are the basic acts of Islam, and they are considered mandatory by believers and are foundational to Muslim life. And they are summarized in the Hadith of Gabriel. So first, I'm going to talk about Shahada. So Shahada is the profession of faith that is required of all Muslims, and essentially it states that there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger. And that statement sort of emphasizes the monotheistic nature of Islam, which is given the phrase of Tawheed. The recitation of Shahada is essential for conversion, or I guess, delineation as a Muslim, and it's part of daily prayers, and it is also recited immediately preceding death. The next pillar I'm going to talk about is Salat. So Salat is the ritual prayer that must be offered 5 times daily at dawn, midday, afternoon, sunset, and night. And I'm going to talk a little bit about these 3 terms right here. So oftentimes in areas that are like Muslim areas, you will have these leaders known as muezzins. And these muezzins, they call people to prayer in a process known as adhan. And they call them from these towers that are basically attached to mosques known as minarets. So these muezzins are leaders that call to prayer, which is known as adhan. And they call from these Muslim towers known as minarets. And in the process of Salat, Muslims perform wudu, which is a ritual washing. They face the direction of the Mecca, which is known as Qibla, and then they recite prayers in cycles that are known as a raka'at. That term is fairly important. It comes up especially as you get to higher levels. But Salat is one of the more commonly asked about pillars of Islam. So raka'at, R-A-K-A-A-T, that's an important term. So some more fun facts about Salat are that there's many different types that you can perform of Salat if in different circumstances. So I'm going to talk about a couple of them right now. So there's one called the Qadza type, which is spelled Q-A-D-A, Qadza. It's pronounced Qadza. And this type of Salat is you're only allowed to, or the only reason that you would perform this type of Salat is if you overslept or you forgot to perform your normal ritual prayer. Another cool fact, so there's a Sunni school of Islamic thought known as the Hanbali Madhab, and this school believes that the failure to perform a certain type of Salat known as the Fard form, F-A-R-D, if you do not perform that practice, that specific form of Salat, then you are actually rendered a non-Muslim. Some other types of Salat. So a special type of Salat that's known as Jumu'ah is that takes place of the Zuhr form. That takes the place of the Zuhr form of this practice of Salat on Fridays. So Jumu'ah, J-U-M-U-A-H, and Zuhr, Z-U-H-R. Those are 2 other types of prayer. And lastly, the Qasr, Q-A-S-R. That's also an important one. That's a form of Salat that you can perform while you're traveling. And that one is often referenced. They won't necessarily use the term Qasr, but they might reference the answer they might be looking for is prayer, and they'll talk about that practice while traveling. So that's kind of an important clue that comes up. All right, the next pillar I'm going to talk about is Zakat, or charitable giving. So a Muslim that has the means to donate, and that term used for that, if a person that has means is nisab, N-I-S-A-B, and those Muslims are expected to donate 2.5% of their assets. That's sort of like the rough estimation. And there's a term for if you donate above that 2.5%, that's considered voluntary charity. And that term is sadaqah, or voluntary charity. And a cool fact about zakat is that, so there was a historical figure named Abu Bakr, who was the first of the rightly guided caliphs. And he waged a group of wars against Arabian tribes called the Rida Wars, which is spelled Ridda. And these wars were waged because those Arabian tribes, they refused to observe Zakat. So that's kind of an interesting fact about that. Right, pillar number 4, this is sawm. And sawm references the fasting that is required during the month of Ramadan. And during this month, adherents are to abstain from eating and drinking between dawn and dusk. There's 2 important meals that signify the beginning and end of each day. So, or not, excuse me, not the day of the month. So before the dawn prayers, fasters eat a meal known as suhoor, and then the fast is broken at night by a meal known as iftar. And a cool fact about iftar is that it begins by eating a date. So, and the day that Sawm ends is commemorated in the holiday known as Eid al-Fitr. And that holiday is known for its feasts and lavish celebration. You might be familiar with Eid as well. All right. A couple other clues about Sawm. So it's believed that if you do not participate in Sawm, or you do not do this action, you're supposed to either clothe or feed 64 people. So essentially, participate more in Zakat in a way, if you think about it. And in between performing Sawm, the night of power, which is just a day in Sawm, that is celebrated, and in the Taraweeh, which is like an Arabic term for a night prayer, a night Ramadan prayer, where they basically just read long verses of the Quran. In some cases, they actually recite the entire Quran, and those are just like recited, and that's basically what that is. So there's just the term night of power, and the Taraweeh are like performed during Ramadan. Great. And the last pillar I'm going to talk about is the Hajj. So the Hajj is the pilgrimage that all Muslims are required to make to Mecca at least once in their lifetime. And during the Hajj, adherents perform several different rituals. Some of the more famous ones are circling the Kaaba 7 times, and also symbolically stoning the devil at Mina. So the Feast of Sacrifice, or also known as Eid al-Adha. So there's like multiple Eids. So be careful about that. They might prompt you in like a game if you're asking for either the end of Ramadan, which is Eid al-Fitr, or the end of Hajj, which is Eid al-Adha. And so this ends Hajj, and during this is when the participants make the 7 counterclockwise trips around the Kaaba, like I previously mentioned. And the Hajj is contrasted with the lesser, quote unquote, Umrah. And Umrah is another pilgrimage to Mecca, but it can be made at any time during the year, whereas Hajj is you're only supposed to observe Hajj at a specific time of the year. And another fact about the Hajj is that requirements of the Hajj include traveling to Mount Arafat for a day of prayer called wukuf, which is spelled W-U-Q-U-F. So wukuf is another prayer that is done during the Hajj. All right, that's it for Pillars of Islam. Be sure to check out the next video on Tennessee Williams. Thanks for watching.